Oh my, it's Kelly White.
Hey, it's James and Kellee.
What are you up to?
Thinking about changing the world.
Me too. We should do a show together.
What would it be about?
Let me show you.
The James and Kellee Show. Hi, James.
We're going to autumn close. It's cold.
I love it. Isn't it like snuggly weather now?
It is. It is here in San Diego. It's kind of chilly. It's gotten down to the 50s, I guess, would be lower 50s. I know for a lot of people. And what's your
okay. Our temperature right now is 68. Doesn't make any sense. But we're having a big rainstorm. So if you hear a big kaboom, that's from outside.
We might be having one too, so we don't know moment to moment what the weather is going to be. We had a lightning storm last week. Hey, we didn't get together last Monday because of the Facebook droppage.
You mean during Mercury retrograde? That was pretty fascinating, right?
Yeah, and a couple of friends of mine have spoken to me this morning, called me up, not in a panic, but it's like, what's going on? So I said, 6 planets in retrograde. And thank you for sending the October report.
You're so welcome.
Jordy, thanks.
Oh, good.
Yes,
hi, Jordy.
Jordy, and would you read to tell people what's going on?
Yeah, so let's just talk about this for a bit. Now we have 2 planets that went direct. So we have 4 retrograde. So imagine how crazy this is. It's like doing the Watusi, James. It's like 2 here, 2 there, the foxtrot here. It's all back and forth. So right now we have Pluto that did go direct. Pluto in Capricorn went direct. So let's talk about that just for a second, because that means that anything that has been hidden for the last several months is going to come right out. Best time for therapy. You think you need therapy? This is the time to do it, because Pluto's direct, and it always is about things that are hidden. And now the other one that went direct is Saturn went direct.
Oh, thank God.
Thank God. And let me tell you what that means, everybody. It means taking responsibility for yourself. And because it's in Aquarius direct, taking responsibility for humanity. So make some changes. This is really the time to rebuild your life. This is the time to do it. Now,
and it's all about that responsibility, that you have to be responsible for everything you say, think, and write and act.
Which I can't wait to talk about our topic tonight, because that's the truth. You really do have to take responsibility. And then on October 18th, so a week from today, which would be really interesting because we're going to be doing a show, it'll be really interesting. Mercury goes direct.
Oh, celebration.
Which that day is going to be a wobble day, right? Just know that. And Jupiter goes direct the same day. So that's going to be like, whoa, what's going on here?
A little bit, but we can breathe.
We can breathe. And then that just remains Neptune and Uranus as retrograde. So after a week from now. So it's really been a hard month, and we're not out of it, because this month also has a lot of squares, a lot of issues, full moon that's intense. So we still are not quite out of any woods yet. But just know, if your energy gets wobbly, start thinking about things like what you can do with your life. It's a good place to go. If you need something to think about, what should I do with my life? This is a great month to figure that one out.
I've been thinking about that. Honestly, I have been. And I've started a new book. I started a new book, and it's a book about, it's a novel I've never done before. And it's something about it. It's just that I'm going to see what happens. And it's bringing issues from the dark into the light, and it's funny you talk about that, because that's what it's all about. I don't know yet what it's probably about, but
okay. That's really interesting, because we're talking about the Pluto, the shadow side. So are you talking about bringing the shadow out?
The shadow out, like when I worked with Debbie Ford, the shadow selves. I want to do something with that, because that really, I love the shadow, and I love the shadow, but it needs to be spoken about, and it's perfect for Pluto time. While we're talking about that, I read a book many, many years ago, and I'm sure you've read it, the Pluto book by Liz Green. You know,
the astrologer. The astrologer. Oh my God!
It was one of the first astrology books I've read, and it was called Pluto by Liz Green, and it was fantastic.
Oh, I bet it was fantastic, because back not that long ago, Pluto was not a planet.
That's right.
It was this hidden kind of thing that came out.
Makes sense.
It makes so much sense, right? Oh, she was a wonderful astrologer.
Yeah, Liz Green. Yeah, I forget the name of the book. I have it somewhere, I think. But
yeah, I'd love to look at that.
Yeah, I can see the cover of it in front of me. There's red Pluto in red. Liz Green. Yeah, it was very good.
Oh my gosh, that would be so interesting.
1985, I booked that book.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's a great time. If you're going to start writing, this is great, James, that you've had the idea and that you're doing that. The other thing that's great for this time is connecting with loved ones on the other side. And I know that you're going to be doing a couple,
Yes,
three events, three
yes.
events.
I find this time of the year for the fall, autumn, of course, we know that October is the veil is thinnest. So
Yeah.
in my mediumship, I have found that when I do the autumn time demonstrations, September, October, November, the connections are really, really strong. So I'm doing 3 demonstrations. I'm doing this Friday night. I'm doing one. And then I'm doing one the following Friday. Well, Saturday, I'm doing another one. It was in New Jersey, but there's something else. But so Friday and Friday, I'm doing consistently for, so either
Wow.
right there, Evening of Spirit. There it is, 45 there. Sign up here, vanprog.com. Yeah, and I haven't done them in a while, and I really enjoy doing them during this time of
Yeah.
year because weird, quirky things come through.
Oh my God, that's so true. It's an
And if I
interesting
haven't worked in a
time.
while, I get some really fabulous information because, as you know, you don't work for a while as a medium, and it builds up and builds up and builds up, and you're,
Yeah.
I'm constantly teaching, but it's like you're open to receiving. And I always, before I do a demonstration, I will always ask the spirit world to give me something different, give me a different way in, bring some new information, see it in a different way. And as you know, Kelly, it's just
Yeah.
wild what comes through. So,
Yeah, but I've been with you. Some of the stuff that comes through is
yes,
it's unbelievable, actually.
that's
Now
unbelievable.
it's extraordinary, and this is the best time to do it. I
Yeah.
think it's such the veil is thin. It's unbelievable.
Right. That's right. Halloween, Hallows Eve.
So let's talk
So,
about
dun, dun, dun.
da.
So it's an interesting subject, near-death experiences we talk about tonight, and it's I think it's there. It's in the zeitgeist, and
Mhm.
it's there. I'm in the midst of developing a TV show regarding it because it's out there and it's going to happen,
Yep.
and it's really an interesting subject because many people have them. It's become more and more popular, of course, very much so. I know you had one,
I did have one, but one thing I do want to say about it, it's which I find fascinating, is that these experiences, these shared experiences, go across every religion, every culture. It doesn't matter.
right?
Everybody can experience or has experiences from different points of view, and yet still come up with the same information. Fascinating to me.
It's really true. And there are common themes, of course, in
Hmm.
NDE, common themes, and there are some that stand out. And there are many, many books that have been written on near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And one was done several years ago. I want to say 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And it was a gentleman came through and authored this book who talked about the darker side of the experience of going to the hellish kind of experience. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too as we go on here. But
Oh, that's
that's
interesting.
very
Wow, I
interesting.
didn't know that one. Well, let's talk about first what is a near-death experience?
Well, for me, and Kelly,
Mhm.
you might have your own idea about this, but for me, it is, um, hmm, well, from personally experiencing it, leaving the awareness of the physical body, the consciousness, if you will, and being out of it, and being aware that you're almost passing to the other side of life, that the
Yeah.
physical life is almost gone. From my experience, I was, God, how many years ago? How many years? Probably 20 years ago now. But I remember I was very sick. And I went to the restroom, had to vomit, and my head hit the sink, and I went blacked out on the floor, and I guess blood. I was bleeding all day. I was throwing up blood all day because I didn't know this, but I had a Mallory Weiss tear, which is esophagus
Oh,
tear, and my stomach would fill up with blood, and then I'd vomit, and then I'd be fine for another half hour, and that was a whole day of that without me knowing. And I didn't want to go to the emergency room, but then about 8 o'clock at night, I was with my friend Brian at the time, and I thought I gotta, I said, Brian, you should come help me. And I went to the restroom then, and they blacked out. And I remember I was out of my body. I was completely out of the body. There was no pain. I was just aware that I'm out of my body. I'm looking down at my body, and I'm like, wow. And there was no time. I was aware there was no time. I was taking every moment of this. There was no time, no linear time. But I knew inside me this was not my time to pass to the spirit world. I just knew that. And immediately I saw in front of me my cousin Patricia, who died of suicide, who
wow.
taught me metaphysics when I was a child. And I hadn't
Wow.
seen her. She completed suicide 30 years before, 40 years before. Interesting.
Wow.
And I would, of all people. And she said telepathically to me, and I remember your personality stays the same. She said to me, "Don't worry, it's going to be over soon." And I said, "Over or over? Can you help me out because I'm in a bad place right here?" Definitely stays there. And she vanished. And I remember immediately I had this awareness of above me, there was like this, I'm gonna say this cord. or this ribbon coming out of the top of my head, which fed into like this matrix and I remember that everybody has a cord or a ribbon on top of their head, which it's really interesting. I knew that every thought, word, act, thought, feeling would have a color to it. And what you did or what you thought created this color and fed into that matrix. And every single person in the world would experience those fractions of what you gave into it. And at the end of our life, we look back and see the colors that we left behind or that we bled into that matrix. And that was really interesting to me. So we got to be careful. And that made sense to me because you got to be careful of your thoughts, your acts, your words. That's really, those are real things. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. And I can't wait to, I guess, teach it, I was thinking. And then immediately of that awareness, I had an awareness of my father in a garden. And I went toward him and I could just say, not walk toward him, it was toward him. And he showed me a rose and he said, it's not your time. You have to go back. I knew he was 27 years old. I knew he was in a tan suit. And he said, you've got to go back. And I went into that rose. And all of a sudden I heard Brian, who was next to me. And he said, James, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I remember I was back in my body. My eyes were opening. I'm like, and I remember the back of my head really hurt. And I heard him say, wake up. And I opened my eyes and the words that in my mouth were, dying is easy, living is hard.
Oh my gosh.
And then I went to the hospital. I lost 5 points of blood, and I was there for 2 weeks with an esophageal tear, which they couldn't do anything about, used to heal. And yeah, that was about, and it was Thanksgiving time. I remember that because I had a roommate in the hospital room with an 82-year-old man who was senility, and he kept on eating turkey soup. And he said, "You can't have any. I can't." So I remember that.
My God.
And I didn't know anything that would affect me until about a year after that, maybe a year and a half. I was doing these lectures every year in Arizona, this conference. And the leader of the conference came up to me and said, I've seen him for many, many years. Your readings have changed this past year. They're very much on a higher level of awareness, or maybe your guides are different. And I thought, wow. And I looked at that, and it's true. There were the messages were much more, we could say, philosophical, spiritual, a sense of oneness, a sense of more guidance in the messages, more than just evidential. So they did change.
That makes a lot of sense. Adding that depth to it.
The depth
you actually have that experience. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's an extraordinary experience.
Yeah. And you had one as well, yes?
I did. So this sounds oddballish, but when I was 3 years old,
we're all eyeballish. So
when I was 3 years old, I had encephalitis, which is an inflammation of the brain. And so inflammation of the brain was, I had a fever of 105, and they took me to the hospital. I was in the hospital for a week, and I went into a coma.
Wow.
Now, my mother was a young mother, and I was the only child. And I remember as they took my lifeless body basically into the hospital, and they were putting vinegar on me and water and trying to get me to, anyway, and then I went into a coma. And here's what happened. I actually went through a whoosh of a tunnel. I don't know how to explain it other than it was black. And then when I got to the opening, which was this light, it was almost like a jello, kind of an odd kind of a thing. And I kind of pushed through, like pushed through. And when I pushed through, there were two women there that were my aunts. Now, I don't have aunts. Both my mother and father had no sisters. So I never had an aunt. Didn't even know, I'm only 3, so I wouldn't really know the word aunt. But they both looked at me, and I felt such love coming, and I just wanted to breathe and be with them. I just wanted this to end and just to be with them. And they said to me, I'm sorry, Kellee, you have to go back. They said, your mother will not be able to live her destiny, so you must go back. Because had I died, my mother would have never become the person she was supposed to become. And I went back. I remember the whoosh feeling back, and I remember the sadness and the loneliness and the depression. And it was about, from what I understand, I came to, and then I was out of a coma. But it was a 3-day journey of hell for my mom and my dad.
Wow.
They didn't expect me to live. But what's interesting is, you've heard of Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven?
Yes, Proof of Heaven. Yes.
So he had meningitis and I had encephalitis, but they're both inflammation of the brain.
Right.
And he was a Harvard surgeon, for people who don't know, who had a near death experience. He didn't believe in any of this, never would have ever. He taught at Harvard. He was a surgeon. He never thought this way until he had a meningitis, a bacterial meningitis, and went into a coma. Didn't come out for a long time. I was in a coma for about a week, or no, about 3 days, and I think he was in a coma for a long time. And then his story about his journey was pretty intense. And when he came out of it, he spent time with God. He spent time with the universe. He spent time, and this was a left brain surgeon who never would have ever talked about it. And he said, they're going to make fun of me, but I'm still going to write about it. And he did write about it.
He certainly did, and opened up a lot of minds with that
Opened
book.
up a lot of minds with this experience. Yeah.
Right? He's
Yeah.
still lecturing about it. That's his work has changed to this type of work now, which is
Isn't that fascinating?
yeah, like Brian Weiss, same thing. He was a Harvard graduate or Yale
Right.
graduate, and changed to
Right.
Tesla.
So
There's
fascinating. Oh my gosh.
Rebecca,
Rebecca.
something good.
Hi, Rebecca. She said, I either had a near death experience or an
Out
OOB, out of body,
of body
when I
experience.
was 5 during a tonsillectomy. Oh, I bet a gas mask was used back then. Remember
Sure,
those? And I
sure.
truly believe I had an overdose of ether. I found myself at the ceiling in the corner of my room looking down on myself. I could see the doctors around me. I felt ageless. It seemed normal to be watching myself. My mind did not feel like that of a child. It felt like a soul. That's so true. And that's Rebecca, thank you for saying that. I can still remember this experience like it was yesterday. Okay, thank you for saying that. I feel like, and I was a child development major, that was my bachelor's. I understand as a 3-year-old, I wouldn't know the word destiny. But guess what? I knew it. I knew
Sure,
everything, just like she just mentioned. Good.
sure.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that.
An out of body experience is very similar, except I would guess it's just a matter of semantics. Near death, you almost do die. And out
Hmm.
of body experiences, you can have them. You can be trained to go out of your body. The Monroe Institute trains people. Robert Monroe, back in I think it's in the Carolinas, and the Monroe Institute actually teach people about leaving the conscious of the physical body, stepping out, and then you can have out of
Right.
body experiences. And people do have consciously. We go out of our body all the time, but we're not conscious of it. But you can learn
Right.
how to consciously. And near death experiences where you almost are owed to the other side of life, that realm.
Right.
There
And
are some,
I think sometimes it's usually though that it's not your time to go.
yeah, so there are some
Mhm.
commonalities that most people talk about, and what you mentioned, one, the tunnel. There's a sense or a feeling of going through a tunnel, being surrounded by a tunnel, and
Mhm.
then many times there are people at the other side of that tunnel, whether relatives or guides or people that you know, and there's an overwhelming. Some people have a sense of this bright light, beautiful light. They can barely describe it. They call it God, or they call it all these different things.
Mhm.
It's this incredible love that they feel drawn to. I've demonstrated that.
Mhm.
There's also many times a sense of a life review can be happening very, very quickly because you're outside of
Yeah.
linear time, that you can have an awareness of things you've done in the past, in the beginning of your life, and how you affected other people to that day. There is a
Yes.
sense sometimes that people have a destiny sense of going back to accomplish, to finish something. Um,
Mhm.
and I think sometimes, I wonder sometimes if it has to happen in them to do that. They have to have this near experience in order to
Yeah.
accomplish that
That's what I
destination.
think, James. I think it has some, on some level it must. Yeah.
And many people talk about Jesus, and they see Jesus. Sometimes they
Yeah.
see, and sometimes, like I've said, mentioned earlier, they can have hellish experience. They're darker experiences. I don't, sorry, I don't remember the name of the book, but this gentleman he wrote a book about going to the darker sides. Now, to me, what that says, and I don't know till I pass
Mhm.
over either, but to me, I know that you go to, there are many spaces and places in the realms, right? And that
Right.
you tend to go to that space you've created based with your thought, with your mindset. So if there's something within you, whether it's fear based or ignorance or a darkness, or that's whatever that is, and you believe that,
Mm.
you might experience that. I think that most of us are love beings. I don't believe in evil. I believe in
Right.
love. I don't know what your beliefs are, Kelly, but I believe
Yeah.
in degrees of love, if you will.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's part of the ego, maybe the dark part of that.
That's what I kind of always have thought, James. A little bit
Yeah,
that it was the ego, that there was something that maybe they had done some things that maybe they, wanted to think about, or something that, they had guilt
unconsciously,
feelings of. Yeah, yes. Something like
maybe.
that could
So,
have happened.
and there's all that sense also of the life certainly changes usually with the near death experience. And I know that I was thinking about this earlier. To me, there are two commonalities of
Okay.
that I have found, that when people pass over, like a mother or a child, I find that many, many times that when someone passes over like a child, it forces the mother and father or whoever partner to go on their spiritual path. to be awakens them to their spiritual
Yeah.
truth. And really, in a way, it's a gift. And
Yeah.
perhaps that was also decided before they came back into the lifetime
Yeah.
within that soul group, before in the
Hmm.
pre-planning of that life, that at this certain age, I'm going to go over first, and it'll force you to go on your spiritual path. I think that's more true than not.
Yeah. I do
You
too.
know?
I absolutely agree with that. I
Yeah,
mean,
and yeah.
I was gonna say, I think there are, certain things that when you've had a near-death experience, that when you come back, as you said, you became more philosophical, you became deeper, you became understanding of maybe patience and tolerance
Patience,
and
much more
forgiveness.
patience. Yeah.
And those are the kind of things that people would learn from some of these experiences, if you have one. And one of them would be to be grateful,
To be grateful for
right?
every moment of life,
For
because
every moment of life.
it's a gift. I mean, it is a gift because you
Mhm.
can't do those things, tangible things on the other side. You can do the physical things here. It's like the building blocks here. It doesn't happen
Yeah.
on the other side. We progress quicker here, believe it or not, than we do in the spiritual realms. Because here we really got to go through the grit of it all.
Right, right.
Very
And the other thing is when you're on the other side, oh, well, let's look at this. Roxanne Kenning. I had a near-death experience at 29. My heart stopped. I wanted to stay, and I was told it wasn't my time. I'll never forget the experience, right, Roxanne? Sorry that happened, but you just will never forget the experience.
And had that during a Saturn return, if I could just throw
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
which
you're
is a
absolutely
major
right.
spiritual growth time of our lives.
Huge. I got chills when you said that. That would have been a big thing
Big
here.
one.
A big one. I mean, it's a good question. Are these events, these near-death experiences, planned?
It's a good question. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
I think some are. I think some. I don't know. I don't
yeah.
know. It's hard to say. I
Eh,
mean, some of them could be based upon choices that we make, things that we do during the day that we just certain choices we made. I don't
right.
know. It's hard to say.
So, there's a question here from Illusion. How can we be sure that what we see in a near-death experience is what we will see when we die?
Well, it's a great question.
Yeah,
Well, I would just say this. First of all, number one, it teaches you to go inside and understand who you are. Does it make sense to you when you have these experiences? Is it something that would make sense for you to reach out, to have these values, or look back to
right,
life and treat people in a better way? And if that's it, then when you pass over, you'll have that same experience of living those values, and
right.
this is who you are. So what you see is what you get. Again, I always tell people, if you want a great experience, you pass out of this body at lifetime, look back and make sure you've had the best time. And do good, because when you
Right.
get to the side, what awaits you is the good that you've done.
Well, I'll tell you,
Or
I
bad
saw
that you've
this. It's so
done.
true. I was watching this video, and I'll have to post this. It was one I sent to you earlier. It was so
It was
fascinating.
amazing,
Wasn't it
amazing.
amazing? And I want to thank Karen Glass. Thank you, Karen, for sending that to me because I thought it was phenomenal. But it's about a nurse who was from Wisconsin, I think. And she had a near death experience. And while she was on the other side, she got to see her life in the future. And she got to see when one day, actually, what they did is they showed her in the past. And there was a person at the supermarket and she didn't have enough money for her children for food. So this nurse gave her money and said, "No, nope, I understand. I was a single mother. Here's some money." And that woman, they showed her that woman in the future, and she was helping to raise money and to give money for food to other people. So that's the effect. As you've always said, be in a good mood, that mood translates. Be in a bad mood, that energy goes out.
It's a
But they
ripple effect.
showed her the good she had done in her life. And I thought that was my favorite part of that video.
Yeah, it's really true. You want to have a life that you're very proud of, the good things that you do,
Yes.
because that's really who you are. Love is your soul. And
Right.
even now, with these hard times in the world, we can't forget who we are. We are love. Whether it's disrupted by, or we take a
Right.
temporary disruption of things because we see how ugly things are out there, maybe to us, we got to still remember who we are. And we are loving beings. And
Right.
we'll never lose that. We'll never
Well,
lose that. So, harder it is, make it easier on yourself.
so true. So Nancy Shobe says, I had a near-death experience when I was 6 years old. I fell through the ice and nearly drowned.
Wow.
I felt a feminine presence holding me close to the hole of the ice.
Wow.
I felt safe, protected, warm, and unconditionally loved. It was so beautiful.
That was great, Nancy. And that
Wow.
somehow affected Nancy's life. No doubt about it, 'cause she remembers that experience
Yeah.
right now. So that means that at some level she remembered that going through her life, and
Yeah.
probably that warmth, that compassion stayed with her.
Yeah.
So how do we know that does that experience does just shape our souls, and
Right.
each experience that we go through?
And it would
That's something
shape,
to
I
remember.
would think, how you treat others.
Yeah,
And also we're talking about fear and about belief systems and God and love. I mean, it would really carry you on. That's a big one. I appreciate you sharing that. And I love the ones that when you're young like that. And isn't it interesting? Their memories are as sharp as a tack.
Innocence.
This happens when they're young.
Kelly, I want to talk, just quickly jump in about the experience of being so left with Jesus and angels.
Mhm.
Remember that there are so many levels of knowing and learning, and I
So
just to
true.
keep an open mind to anything, whatever
Absolutely.
it is. Don't limit your belief system to a religious dogma.
No.
Be open to everything. Pure love, let's just call it. Maybe we don't have the words here in this level, but pure love. We are pure
Yeah.
love. That's what you'll experience. If you give that out, you'll get it back, as the Beatles say.
Absolutely.
What you make is what you
Absolutely. Marie Beauchamp, do we have to actually die to have a near death experience? I felt like I was slipping away when giving birth. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry.
Hi, Marie. Kelly, what do you think?
Well, a near death, the definition is that you've died. But, I don't know, James.
There's no death, you
There's
see.
no death.
So it's a
That's
level of
true.
consciousness. So
Yeah.
what we talk about is maybe the deeper levels of consciousness here and awareness. So do you have to be not breathing? No, because a lot of near experience is still breathing, or sometimes you don't breathe.
Hmm.
But I think you can have a near experience and be close to that state and get that and come back like I did.
Yeah.
There are different levels of it, if you will.
Well,
Um,
this is interesting. Dr. Eben, the one we were talking about,
Alexander,
who wrote, the book after he had gone to the other side, he said, during my coma, my brain wasn't working improperly. It wasn't working at all. So
interesting.
it's interesting how science will go back and say, well, your brain was still. And he's like, no, I'm a neuroscientist. It was not working.
The
Isn't
brain
that
is tied to
interesting?
the physical. Yeah,
Yeah,
the brain is tied to the physical. The mind is eternal. The mind is control.
exactly.
The brain shuts off. It's an organ. It shuts off with the
Hmm.
physical.
Yeah.
Just like stroke of insight, the lady who had the stroke, who was also a neuroscientist, and she had a stroke, and she's like, I got to remember what I'm experiencing right now because I do this for a living. I got to remember this. And she was aware of a consciousness that she had. And it was just, she was aware of all the energies in the room, of people coming into the room. I remember one, she said, I don't want that doctor in this room because he has bad energy, pushed him away with the energy. So it's still alert. And that's the mind working, not a
Yeah.
brain. So
Listen,
interesting.
listen to
Stroke of
this.
insight.
Elizabeth Glomsky says, my husband had a near death experience. He was in a coma for 2 weeks. They told his family not to expect him to live. The only memory he has of that time was that he was in a prison on death row. And every time they tried to put him to death, something would stop it, like the power would go out in the electric chair. He said this changed his life and helped us meet and marry. So something like that may have put him on the right track. That's a
Wow.
big one.
That's a big one. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good. That's a book right there. I'll tell you the truth. That's
Yeah.
a real good one.
Marie.
Maria Rodriguez. I had a near-death experience when I was 34. My family was waiting, and I was sent back. Very common in near-death experiences, and I was told it was not my time. I need to go back, and I was sent back, and I became a totally new person. Yes, Maria, that's exactly what we hope to happen. In near-death experience, become a totally different person, different perspective, if you will, different
Right.
perspective, and also that sense in near-death experiences, which is pretty common, which is lovely, is that sense of oneness that we're all
Yeah.
connected. Oneness, and I always say love is oneness. Love equals one. Love equals one. Omnipresent, nurturing energy.
Oh, I
ONE.
love that.
Nurturing energy. That's what I define love. And when you have a near-death experience, there is that
Yeah.
sense of oneness that we're all connected as one. And I always say the two illusions we have in this three-dimensional world: death, because there is no death. There is no such thing as death. You can't kill energy. It just transforms. And the other is separativeness. But we're all
Right.
separated, but we're not. We're actually one. And I often
Mhm.
say, if you see the diversity in people, see that diversity because that's God. The difference in each person. That's what you want to learn from, and that's what we should be celebrating.
First spiritual law is the law of oneness.
Love oneness.
No such thing as separation. I am you, you are me.
That's right.
That is the truth. Um, Sue Wells says, my mom used to say, your spirit will always be near you because spirit lives after the body expires. That's right.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Wow.
I love that. Um,
Wow.
this is so fascinating. Okay, Karen Bennett. For children who have near death experience with parents who don't believe or discourage them talking about it, do those memories stay dormant? I maybe they may stay dormant, but it's an implicit memory. It's
Yeah.
called implicit, and so it would go back, and they could bring. All of a sudden, they may have a feeling of something, and then that could open that door.
Because the soul never forgets. The
Soul
soul
never
will
forgets.
store it up. And as Kellee said, when certain events happens or something triggers that, I think that the soul will bring it right back to the surface. So I don't think it goes.
Absolutely.
It may go for a little bit. It'll come out, and they're so important. I think in our own soul's development that it will come out in some way.
Oh, I think it does too.
Well, teach the parents.
So Elizabeth Preston says, does a near-death experience happen every time someone goes into a coma? What about medical induced coma?
I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going to say I don't know the answer to that. Because I don't. I do know in comas. We could do a whole show on comas, but I know from my experience with patients who have talked about it from the other side, and living people, by the way, for comas, that they were very aware. Even Alzheimer's patients, very aware of themselves at different moments. Not all the time, but at moments they were aware of themselves. And many times there are Alzheimer's patients who would talk about being comas, and they say they were out visiting family members still living on the earth. And they would see them on they visit them on the earth in different places. So they're very aware, but not always do I think they're aware of the coma, conscious. So they're aware.
Well, it's funny. I had a client who was in 3 months in a coma with COVID, actually, in March, April, and May of 2020. And when he came out and he was able to, down the line, I could see him and talk to him on a Zoom. I mean, like months later, I said to him, "What was that like for you to be in a coma? Do you have any memories of it?" And he said, "Well, I hope you understand what I'm about to say." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm all ears." And he said, "I I saw Jesus." Now, this person is a Catholic person, and he said, "I saw Jesus." And I
That's the
said,
rest.
and what was the conversation about?" And he said he just hugged me and smiled, and I knew with love. And then he said to me, "I've got to make some changes." And I'm going to tell you what, this man turned his life around like nobody's business. When I tell you he was on a tear, he was on a tear. I actually, before he had COVID, I said to him, "Don't take that trip. I have a bad feeling. Please don't take that trip." And he took it, and he ended up very ill.
I
And then,
remember that. I
remember
remember.
that story? Well,
Yes, a
what
couple
a
of those.
life change. Yeah,
You had a couple of those people, and I think one you
mhm.
warned, and they passed with COVID,
That's correct. One died and one lived. Yeah,
and you
mm,
warned them.
I
I
did.
remember when they were going on the other. They were passing out. I remember you were talking to me.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. So it's interesting. Kate Yanchenko says, when you're experiencing near death experience, do you actually go to heaven?
Well, so what is heaven? So is heaven a place you go to, or is it a state of mind? So I would say it's a state of mind. So all around us is heaven. So it's a different level of
Yeah.
consciousness. So it's not a certain place, it's all around you. So, and that space, you can create your heaven or your hell based on how you lived your life. But the love that you give out, that the love that you make is the love you take, as we talked about. So you can have that heavenly world all around you. So it's leaving the conscious of the physical realm and going to another level of consciousness, which is
Yeah.
all around us. So I would look at it that way. That makes
That's a
more
good.
sense to me. And your friend who saw Jesus, again, it's a religious depiction. So a Catholic background, but of course, have Jesus.
Right.
A Muslim would be different. Buddhist would have different. So it's
Absolutely.
belief systems there. And even the man, I told this to someone today in my soul care this afternoon. When I was doing a reading for somebody in the audience, and her aunt was coming through. You'll remember this, Kellee. And I remember at the side of my eye, her father who had passed came over toward me, walking with his
Yes.
arms across. And I said to him telepathically, as I'm working with her, I said,
Yeah.
"I know this is your daughter. Do you want to speak to her?" And he said, "Why would I want to? I didn't believe in this in life. Why would I believe in death?" So you become the same awareness or your mindset. You don't change. That's who he was. And what happened was amazing. He watched the process, said, "Okay, that's okay. Just come watch the process. Feel free." He watched the process of communication and eventually got into it. And he said, "Wow, this is great. Can I try it?" I said, "Go for it." And he was able to give his daughter a message that she totally understood, evidential message. She understood. And he was able to tell her he's sorry about certain things he did in his life. And she forgave him.
I
And he was
remember that because it was so healing for her. It was so healing, and the whole audience just could breathe a sigh of, "Oh my God!" They could feel that healing. That was incredible.
It was an incredible one. And
Yeah.
another one, just on the side of it, I remember that once there was a reading it with a young man who completed suicide, and he was in a wooden paneled room, and described it to his aunt who was in the audience. And that was his bedroom. It was down by the garage. And he killed himself because the father, I think, was having an affair or something happened, something weird. And he didn't forgive his dad or something. And he was stuck in his mindset, still in this room, because he used to run into this room when with his dad. He used to go and hide in this room and stay in this room, and he still was in this room after he left the body. He didn't know where to go, and I talked to him about forgiving his father, and someone else in the spirit world was helping him, and eventually we got him to change his mindset, and he was more open. Now he understood where his father was at, where this person was at, and he was more open to receive. And immediately there were those in the spirit world just came and took him, and he was ready to see them and be with them, and he understood things more. So we can lock our minds to a certain mindset, and we talked about earthbound. Look at earthbound, but there certainly is a mindset we can block ourselves into for that period of time. Definitely. Weird, huh? Laura Essig, my daughter and I had okay. Afterwards, she said, "Why were you guys talking about my BF?" I said, "What do you mean? How do you know what we were talking about?" She said, "I was there the whole time. You guys just couldn't see me."
Oh my God. That's a
Yeah,
great one. That's a
it's a
great
great
one.
one.
I
The
have to
famous,
answer this one. Yeah.
yeah,
Nancy Ross says many people report experiencing depression after a near death experience, which I did at 3. Have you thought of having counseling sessions or support groups for these people? It's such a great idea. I'd be happy to. But if I had a group, I'd be happy to. I think it's a great idea.
I was going to mention earlier, Kelly, that I forgot that people who had near-death experiences will often talk about. There's 2 very famous cases where there was one about this boy's sneaker was in the outside ledge of the hospital. This little boy, and he talked about the red sneaker on the 7th floor ledge, and how would he know that if he was if he was dead? And he said because he popped out of his body and he saw that sneaker, and they found the sneaker. And another time there was near-death experience where someone talked about the surgeon's pens in the pocket, the different types of pens that were there, the brands of pens. Sure enough, there were. Now, how would this person know this? Well, they were out of their body and they had near-death experience, and when they came back, they saw that. So that's very common.
Wow, that's amazing. Janice Godwin, the biggest thing in memory is the abundance of love and acceptance and beauty.
That's
Very
right,
true.
and not to find it for someone else, but within yourself.
Right. So Marie Bates Curry, I have had an NDE. I was in 2003, but I remember every bit of it like it was yesterday. I get
Yeah.
that. Had a severe closed skull injury from being in a car wreck. It was absolutely beautiful. Wow. And it can happen from a car accident. It can happen from an illness. It can happen from some severe traumatic event, I even think.
Wow, and here's Georgian Hansen Marknick. Interesting. I was 16 when I had near-death experience. There you go. Okay. I saw a man, a little boy, and would have a happy life. I saw many spirits I knew. Some I did not on the hill in the beautiful meadow. My cousin was 19 when he passed, ran toward me. The divine voice, I love that. The divine voice was calm, strong, got louder as I got closer to my cousin. I was given a choice by the Lord, divine voice. I cried to send me home, and boom, I landed my body in my bed. I met that 19-year-old man in the movie when I was 17. Wow.
Wow. What a great story. Thank you for that. Wow. Oh, I love this one. Renee Hounsel says, once we experience us as love, that expansive, there is a profound wanting to bring that to everyone.
Very
Oh,
true.
so true. The sense of purpose, right, and life force energy is everything is more vivid after that near death experience. That is so
Very
true.
true, sweetheart. Thank you for sharing that. It's very true. Very,
Yeah.
very true. You're right on. Very true.
Mm,
Yeah, it's almost something that you have to share because it's so profound. It's just you
right.
gotta share with everybody.
Kat Lynn says absolute acceptance, peace, and love beyond description.
True. Yeah.
So
There's no
true.
word. We're
There's
limited
no
here.
right. We're so limited, and we're limited in time here too. We're limited
Yes.
on time, which on that side, when you have those experiences, there is no time.
It's an interesting dichotomy, I guess, in a way. We're hearing the physical vibration because I don't know. I'm very aware of it. I'm where you got to live in the moment and do the things you have to do. But when you're aware there's something bigger and out there,
Mm,
like wow, I can't wait to get home. But you
right.
got to do the work here. You can't think that way. You got to do the work you have to do here because that time will come eventually for all of
Now,
us. But
here's an interesting question from Therese Holiday. She says, "Can someone come very close when taking ayahuasca?" So I've never done that, so I can't answer that. James?
and I have, and I would
Mhm.
say yes because I did that in Brazil many years ago, many years ago before it was even known as a thing. And my mother was there, but I also had my higher self I experienced. and it was me. My eyes, every time I've had a regression or a vision, my eyes and my mustache were always there. And this was my higher self, the golden turban. And in this vision, in this moment, this higher self gave me a purple amethyst ring and said, "This is your initiation. We want you to know this." Okay, this is as close to that NDE, also, by the
Right.
way. And then a week later, and I had people down there. I was sponsoring a trip down to the spiritual centers around Brazil. And before we went home, some people wanted to go to souvenirs. They wanted to go to this jewelry store in Bahia. And I thought, what the heck am I going to ask? So I walked up to the counter to this lady and I said, "Do you have any men's rings, like amethyst rings?" She goes, "Why do you ask?" I said, "Well, I thought here at a jewelry store." And she said, "Well, it's funny you say this because a week ago, a man came in and ordered this ring. We made it for him. He never came back." So she opens up the second drawer, pulls out this amethyst ring, the exact same ring in my vision, exact to the shape.
Oh my God.
And I tried my finger, it fit perfectly. So I bought that ring. And now it's gone. It's gone to somebody else. Someone stole it from me eventually, believe it or not. And which I guess they have to. But that was yes, I would say yes. I mean, ayahuasca, LSD, hallucinogens, certain mushrooms, the sort of thing. They make the veil thinner. So
Is that what
that's
it is?
oh yeah. It makes the veil thinner, and you can
Okay.
have profound experiences. But you got to be stable and you got to be grounded because you can't be jumping to the vibration which you're not used to quickly without being, I can just say, grounded or centered in your awareness, who you are, because it could be crippling, I believe, to the mind. I
Oh, I
do.
couldn't agree
Yeah,
more. That's
you
why
have
I've
to wait
never
for it.
wanted to go there. But Kat Lynn has a good question. She says, James, you mentioned about wanting to go back home. Can you give an opinion on whether those after a near death experience come back and have ambition to live a fuller life, or they just want to go back home? It's a
Oh,
good
I think
question.
it's a good question. I mean, for cat, I would say that most NDEs that I'm aware of
Yeah.
people that who would want to make better their lives in some
Yeah.
way
I
and
would
better
agree.
lives of every other person and do something more purposeful in their lives. That is the
Yeah.
most common after effect, if you will. For me, when I say, "Oh, go home," to me, I'm just so aware of the spiritual work that I've been doing for 40 years. I think it's more of that I'm aware so much of the spiritual realms that are around. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I'm not fear of death at all. I've had too many great experiences. Physical mediumship with Leslie Flint, who was the greatest physical medium in the last ones of the 20th century that lived, and I heard actual spirit voices, which is a little cassette tape of my mother's voice, and you can all hear that on the internet. Leslie Flint, and you go hear Queen Victoria, Houdini, all these people's voices, and they talk about the voice box that was used. So once you've had experience like that, and also the work that I've done for 40 years, and seen other great mediums like Kelly and other mediums around the world work, it to me it validates. It just
Yeah.
validates, and it makes me know that this time that we have on this earth is very short. The 70, 80, 90 years in earth time is like that in the
Yeah.
spiritual realm. So you want to make the best of those moments.
You want to make every day count.
It's true.
It is so true. Um, let's see. Oh, here we go. Anna Murphy. I had an out of body at 25 years old. It took 40 years to realize the bright white light was my own in my light
There
body.
you go.
And the
Oh,
profound
there
love
you
I
go.
felt was my own perfect love you return to when you leave this body. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you,
That's
Anna.
great.
That's great. And again, we get limited with our descriptions here or terms that we use here because something might not be correct in a way that it could be your own light that you're looking at and so forth. So
Yeah.
higher self, that voice of the divine, that light of the divine. It's all that. It's just about pureness of love, whether
Yeah.
it's us or that. Yeah.
Laura Essex says, we are getting back to the knowingness of the whole, the
That's
one.
right,
Yes.
Laura. Good to see you. Yes, the whole, the oneness. I'm the present
Yeah.
nurturing energy. You bet.
Nadia F., do you have to flatline to experience NDE? I don't think
No,
so.
I didn't. I would have
Yeah.
flatlined.
Yeah.
My
No.
soul was over there, though.
But it certainly could happen.
It could. Oh, that brought sure, of course. They brought people back who flatline. Sure,
So
amazing.
Carla Donovan Campbell says, I have lived a spiritual life since I came back, and I help many cross as well and help
Perfect.
parents who have also lost a child like I have myself. James, you were part of my spiritual path. I read all of your books to help me understand what I experienced.
Thanks,
It's
Carla. Good for you.
wonderful.
Very good. Good work. Good work, sweetheart.
Yeah. Um, oh my gosh. let's see, what else do we
Stephen
have?
Copthorne says there's a book out there called Conversation with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Yes, very good book, and it says to accept death, not be afraid of it, and always embrace it, and life gets better. Very true, Stephen. Very, very true. And I know Neil very well. Very, very true message there. Yeah, accept the good, bad, the ugly, but it's part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just want to mention this. There are 10 or 11, I should say, life-changing lessons when you've had a near-death experience. The first one is be grateful. The second one is let it go. Like
Let it
whatever
go.
it is, just let it go. Okay. My third one is accept that some things are beyond your control.
Lovely. Perfect.
Number 4, trust your instincts.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very
Number
true.
5, take calculated risks.
Oh, that's
Like
great.
somebody today was on your program and and you said to them, look, you can be a nurse and a medium, or a lawyer and a medium, or a therapist and a medium. That's a calculated risk. You can do it. Go forward in your life. Whatever you do, go forward.
You got to jump in sometimes.
Jump
I mean,
in.
I did 9 to 5 job. I did mediumship. Not sure what would happen. Sometimes you have to jump in.
Sometimes you have to jump in. Do what you love.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that
Passion.
true? Stop judging others.
Judgment is fear based.
It's
Yeah.
fear based. Spend time with people who matter.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
Be kind.
Be kind. Yes, excellent.
Slow down.
Yeah, slow
My
down.
favorite is thoughts are things and have energy. Watch your thoughts. Forgive. Life
Yeah,
is really too short.
it's true. Yeah, thoughts are energy. Exactly. What energy are you going to leave to the world? What are you going to give into the world? So that's
Right.
that thing again with the matrix. What are you leaving in? What are you giving in? How you paint that
Exactly.
picture? Use nice light colors, pastel colors, beautiful colors people will love, or using dark colors, moody colors. People don't see those
Right.
colors. What are you using to,
Exactly. We have to read this one. This is Kristen King. She said, I was in a horrific airplane crash in 1969 with Allegheny Airline. So sorry. I had a near death experience, and for many, many years, I just wanted to go home. I saw 3 spheres that were my guides, and they told me not to cross to them. They came to me. I was in -5 degrees for 6 hours. My father was killed. I was 17. I ran away from home with my mother. My dad came to get me. Wow.
wow,
Wow. I have
wow.
chills. That is some
That's
story.
amazing, Kristen. That is amazing. I'm sure you've made an
Wow.
incredible life based upon that experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have. You would have no
Wow.
choice.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Woof.
incredible.
Oh my gosh. Terry Ann Claus, does near death experience necessarily mean that we leave our body temporarily, or can we still be in a body and experience an NDE? In August of 2012, I'd got very ill from bleeding for 3 months straight. I'd gone to the hospital on August 16th. After doing all kinds of tests, the doctors came back and told me that it was a miracle that I was still alive. A person's normal blood count is 14, and I was at 4.1. Oh my God. I cried, and then a sense of peace came over me, and I was ready to go home to God. I ended up having 4 something. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
When we talk about leaving our body temporarily, I use the analogy of that the soul 30% is here, but 70% is over there. And how do we know native experience that we just go more to the consciousness of out of the body than in the body?
Yeah.
Like when I had mine, I was still a part of my body, but my conscious awareness was totally outside of the body. So that's a bit of saying you can be both places at once, I guess.
Right. Right.
But your
I th-
conscious is the bigger picture, if you will. Because
um
right now, as we sit here, we're on other levels. We're experiencing other levels. We're not remembering they're conscious of them here in the physical, but we're experiencing them on other levels around us.
so true.
Yeah.
So true. Cindy Marie says unconditional love and gratitude are what I've lived since my near death experience. Good. That you've learned something that's important.
And you know what, Cindy? The word that I got was, and I just got that word when Kelly, you were reading that, and you've used common sense.
Oh,
You've used common sense. So, Kelly, I'd add that to your list. Add that common
I'm
sense.
adding it. Common sense number 12.
Cindy Marie, thank
Common
you. Common sense. I'm sure you use
sense.
sense. That's good for
Please
you.
God.
Common sense.
So true.
Renee,
Oh,
here you go. Renee Hansel has a group, IANDS. Yes, a group are incredible resource people. Thank you, sweetheart, for saying that. I've heard of them. IANDS. Yes,
oh my
yes.
gosh.
International
Um,
Association of Near Death Experiences. I think it is, but yes,
is that what
I've
it
heard of them.
is?
Yeah, and they meet once a year. I think it's in Arizona. They meet around the world, but they have
Oh,
in the U.S. I know they meet quite every year.
Carla Donovan says, one thing I noticed after she had a near-death experience was I didn't stress the small stuff. I walked in faith and trust because it was so beautiful over there. It's the truth.
There was a book that came out many, many years ago, and it was a series of books. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Remember that?
Yes,
And
I
it was a therapist,
do.
a good-looking man, blonde-haired guy that wrote them. And I remember it was on a book tour in Seattle, and he was there at the airport. I said, "Thanks for writing that." Yeah. And we were at the same time doing book tours, and then he died. He died in his mid-40s. I remember about his mid-40s, but he left behind great books. And it was Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and then ones after that. And I remember that quick little 5 minutes or 7 minutes at the airport, and it was just this exchange of energy. And a nice guy.
Oh
And
my God.
his wife carried on after him. But yeah, just
And
remember that.
wasn't it Don't Sweat the Small Stuff and it's all small stuff?
And it's all small stuff.
Yeah. But he died after that?
Yeah, like 45, 44 years old. Yeah. He just died. Yeah. Like
Oh, well, he did his purpose. He got in and got out.
I think got out. And he was like an all-American looking guy and like a volleyball player. I don't know. It was just really interesting. And his energy was interesting. It was a nice, peaceful, calm energy.
Oh
And
my
yeah,
gosh.
he was working left.
Wow. Wow. I was going to mention too, there's a good movie, if you haven't seen it, that's about like a near-death experience. It's really funny and it's good. It's called Ghost Town. Have you seen it with Ricky Gervais? My husband did the music for it, but it's a good movie. But it was
It's a
very
good movie.
similar to, now I had a traumatic brain injury, but that was not a near-death experience. So that was not a near-death experience. Isn't that interesting?
It's
That was
interesting.
not. But
And
in
you're
this,
not the person to suggest that movie, Kelly. Many people I know love that movie. They talk about that a lot. That movie.
it's a good movie. He dies in some sort of a situation, and then he comes back and he sees dead people everywhere. And that was my experience after my traumatic brain injury, but I didn't have a near death experience. So, but I love that movie. And the music is great.
Tracy held this one. I understand James something about a negative type of NDE, hellish. Yes, Tracy, that people have experienced that darker side. It's not always light and angels and rainbows. Sometimes they experience like a hellish, some people reaching for them, or it's dark, or it feels evil. Or so we talked about that earlier, that there could be a part of their aspect of their unconscious, their subconscious self, something that's coming out to the surface. Maybe it's a belief system. So again, yeah,
Could be a belief system.
could be a belief system.
Absolutely. Here's one. Brenda Parrish. Hi, Brenda. Why does when one person talk about their NDE experience, they go through the light and some don't? It's a good question.
Question. I didn't go through light. I don't. I just said.
And I did.
And you did. And I did. Some people go through a tunnel. I didn't go through a tunnel.
And
So,
then not only that, but when I got out, it was like this. I want to say like I don't know, odd sort of a jello kind of a
membrane.
That was it. Well, here's the weird thing. When I was doing a little research with Dr. Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven, he described the same thing. Go figure. Go figure. Dana Cazzoni says, I signed up for your event on Friday. Good. She said, my dad passed in 2019, and I've asked him to come through and have you say, don't sweat the small stuff, because he said that to me all the time. Okay.
Dana.
That's for you then, Dana. I have chills.
Message. I mean,
it's starting to happen already.
Today I was working with my 12 o'clock show, Soul Care, and my guides came through really clearly, and they were channeling. So I think part of Friday night, I'm going to do a channeling with my guides.
Okay,
I think I'm going to start off with that, actually. So
I think that's a great. Oh, I was watching you. Because they were coming through.
They want to come through, and I'm like, okay. So I think Friday, I'm going to let them come in.
You know what? I think they're coming through because there's so much philosophy and so much wisdom that needs to come out again. I think people need a lot more information.
True. It's really true.
And you always have an interesting set of guides because you don't always have the same guides.
Right. It is always interesting. I mean, I really get, and the more I realize it and I'm aware of it, as I tell all my students, that I'm just a vessel. And if I stand to the side and just let them come through, incredible information comes through. Because think of it, this grand information, this expansiveness has to come down in dense vibrations, this narrow linear. So if I was that way, you give more space, more information comes through.
But you're a great vessel for that because you always just open up. I don't care what's going on.
I agree with you because you know we've been together.
I've seen you. You just all of a sudden, and I'm like, okay, here we go. People are saying they have to go back and watch. It was good. Michelle Pope Leslie, is it wrong to want to experience a near-death experience? No, but you know what? You can also experience it by going into a deep meditation. Maybe you don't need to do a near-death experience. Maybe you just go to sleep and have an incredible dream that is very lucid. So
with your guides and having that with
yeah.
your guides, deep meditation, really, really good way. Again, go to my school, the JVP School of Mystical Arts, because there's some great courses there. And one day is a day in heaven. It's a 1-day course, and I bring you to those levels, like the Monroe Institute. Thank you, Renee. And it's that 1 day in heaven, and it brings you those different levels of consciousness and awareness, and you meet your guides and your loved ones, and you talk about your purpose in this life. So that would be a way of experiencing that without having to go flatline or go through coma.
Right.
You can do it in the living. It's just
Yeah,
bringing up a different level of consciousness. So
it's so
that
true.
is a wise thing to do.
Just getting your level of consciousness up. That's exactly right. And there's a question here from Arlene DeWeber. She says, when will you be doing the writing? I just missed it. Your writing class again?
Oh, next year.
Okay.
Next year. Next year I'll be doing that next summer. Yeah.
Okay.
It's great. My writing course is great. I love that. I'm right now in the middle of Mediumship 2 and Mediumship 3. So I'm visiting people in development circles and working with them on that. So, it takes a lot of time up because I'm really, dedicated to it. Yeah. So it takes a while.
Tracy Hildreth says, this is such a fascinating topic and a great reminder to be kind always, outwardly and in our thoughts to ourselves and others. Yes, thank you.
Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
So
right on, sister.
Let's ripple it out, folks. Ripple out the love.
Absolutely. Kathy Hewson asked me if this was Ghost Town 1980. No, this was Ghost Town 2008. Thank you for the question, though.
Oh, by the way, Kelly,
yes.
Neil Diamond. I was watching a show last night.
Okay.
And no, it wasn't this weekend. I want to remember the name of it. And it was something about, I'll tell you exactly what it was called, Midnight Mass.
What?
I've never heard of it. It was called Midnight Mass. I'm like, why haven't I heard of this? And it takes place on Crockett Island. I'm not sure where that is. Made this place up, perhaps. And all they had, it sounded like Neil Diamond music. And it was like a horrific. It was a horror movie. I didn't think it was that horrific. It was a priest go to an island, and all when miracles would happen. So there you go. But it was all Neil Diamond. I thought, is this Neil?
Okay.
Diamond?
What was the name of this?
Midnight Mass.
Okay, honey, if you're listening,
you want to ask
look this up
about that because it sounded
wait. Is he getting paid for this? This is the question.
It was Neil money because it sounded like, and there were songs I'd never heard before, and it was about heaven and about the world, and it's interesting. Yeah. Midnight Mass.
My God.
I'm glad to share that with you.
Thank you. Carol McLean. During my near-death experience, I saw entities like those shown on the movie Ghost, but my near-death experience was in 1978, and that movie was released in 1990. So it was years after I saw them. How fascinating. Fascinating.
I remember when I was a little boy, and I woke, one of the first experiences I had, I woke up talking to heaven when I was like 7 or 8. I was a Saturday morning while the kids were out playing, watching cartoons or playing tag out in the streets. I was in my bed asking to see God. I said, I want to see God. Give me proof of God. And I don't know how much time passed. This hand came through the ceiling, an open hand, a golden light all around it. And I was almost like touched by that awareness. I'm like, oh, that's right. Of course, I remember now. And that was when I put that talking to heaven. Wow. That was an experience I had with that hand. And it was just that energy, that light.
You saw the hand of God.
Hand of God. Yeah, I think I called it the hand of God.
Wow. Well, everybody tune in on this Friday, James. You're doing the Week of Spirit. Then is it Saturday too? Friday and Saturday?
Friday is good. Friday, yeah. Yep. So Friday and the following week I'll be doing another one. Okay. So if you ever experience it, please feel free to. And it's a great evening. And I'll do some channeling at the beginning.
You guys will love it. It's a great evening. It's so much fun. Oh my God. And
Kelly, what are you up to? Are you doing something else?
I'm finishing my book. I'm home now.
I'm expecting to see that book
very soon. Very soon. So I'm not doing anything right now. No more teaching right now.
I'm giving you a timeline here.
Yes, but I will do things on Thursday. I'm doing Ask Me Anything. So I have a show on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. So ask me anything.
Pacific is 6 time? 6
o'clock? 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock
Pacific time. Thanks, Renee, for that. Anyway, well, James, I look forward to seeing you next week with another great topic, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Renee. Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now and Beyond, featuring spiritual medium and master teacher James Van Praagh and spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kellee White.
The James and Kellee Show.